So many of us are held back by the fear of judgment, and I guess it's quite natural, really. Um, we all want to fit in, we all want to be accepted, so it's quite natural that we might want to avoid doing stuff that will result in us being judged by others. Um, so I think it's quite common for people to keep themselves in check, like, oh, I can't do that. I might be judged for that. Um, even even if it's an authentic expression of who you are, you might you might be held back because you fear that judgment from others. And on my own journey, I used to be massively inhibited by the fear of being judged for many, many years. Um, and how liberating it is once you kind of break free from that, and you finally realize that what other people think of you is none of your business, really. I think that was a turning point in my own exploration. The realization that other people's judgment, it's their stuff, it's their business, and it actually has very little to do with you. And once you stop taking judgment so personally, and realize it's the other person's stuff, it makes it a lot easier to deal with. And the reason it is the other person's stuff is because judgment comes from a person's own fears and insecurities. Like, we all have an inner critic that we develop in childhood. It comes from being judged by our parents, from other authority figures. So as we grow up being judged, and it might be in very, very subtle ways, but anyway, the judgment does shape us because we're so dependent during those early years. We strive so much to be accepted that we'll do anything to kind of avoid being judged or to avoid kind of being, can't find the right phrase for it. We'll do anything to gain the approval of our carers, basically. That's what I'm trying to say. So this inner critic that we sort of integrate in our childhood, that's when self-judgment begins. There's a lot of insecurity and self-doubt and fear that can come from this inner critic kind of attacking us inwardly, and that can be painful for a lot of people. So rather than sort of have to deal with that, a lot of people turn their judgment outwards and project it onto other people. And I think this is really important to bear in mind when we're faced with people's judgment, to actually realise, actually, it's a projection of their own insecurity and pain that for whatever reason you've kind of triggered. And in some cases you might not have even done anything. You might just be every time in my videos that a plane passes. So funny. Yeah, so it really helps. It really helps me to realise that actually you might not even have done anything to really trigger the other person. You might just be a blank canvas for their projection. You might just be in the wrong place at the wrong time. But yeah, that's the nature of judgment, really. It's someone's inner critic, sort of projecting judgment outwardly, because it makes them feel better to kind of judge other people than have to judge themselves. Because to judge yourself is a painful business. So people usually deflect that inner judgment and judge outwardly instead. Like, oh, that person's so terrible, or I'm better than that person, or all of that. So I think the key to when you find yourself on the receiving end of judgment, or if you feel held back by judgment, is to try not to take it so personally, and just remember it's usually the other person's stuff. Because, it's to be held back from being who you truly are. It's such a tragedy. I really wish we lived in a world where everyone could be themselves, and not be held back by what other people think. And I think people are always going to judge in some way, shape, or form. Like, even if you did try and fit in and avoid judgment, there'd still be people who would judge. Like, you could be like a really nice person, and someone someone would judge you and say, "Oh, he's too nice. He irritates me." So I don't think there's any getting away from it. Squawk. Yeah. So what do we do? Do we be at the mercy of other people's judgment all our lives? Do we allow other people's judgment to dictate how we think and behave? Or do we trust in ourselves? Do we kind of have the courage to be who we truly are and step out the closet as who we truly are, in spite of what other people might think? Can we give ourselves self-validation? Can we approve of ourselves? Can we learn to think of ourselves in positive ways? Because judgment can be positive as well as negative. Can we turn our inner critic into a compassionate cheerleader, if you will, who makes positive judgments about us and supports us through life? Can we get our inner critic to be more compassionate and work for us rather than against us? Because if we go within and really examine our self-judgments, then we're less likely to really project that insecurity or that judgment onto other people. Yeah, and if you find yourself judging others, it's worth asking yourself, what is it within you that's fueling that judgment? What is the root cause of it? Um, but when you're doing that, don't get caught in the trap of judging yourself for judging others. Don't beat yourself up for judging yourself or others. Just observe that it's happened and be aware of what's going on. Because it's it's having this self-awareness that allows things to change, really. So yeah, I hope this helps. I hope this helps you to be yourself, in spite of what other people think, and gives you food for thought, really, about where judgment comes from and how we can overcome it within ourselves and be ourselves, in spite of other people's judgments. Yeah. Yes. Be you. Be completely who you are, in spite of what other people think.